I was born in 29, in January 29. My parents were both deaf and dumb, so I was responsible for them, you see. I must be responsible, because they used to take me out of school, you know, to go to meetings with my father, like during the war, because everything was rationed, as you know. I mean, Dad was a one-man business, coal merchant, and of course I had to go to Coventry with the meetings and talk on my fingers, like, to tell him what was going on. Yeah. As my school records would show you, you know. Yeah. I was taken out of school to help my parents, you know. He was a good father, don't get me wrong. He was brilliant, but he was very, very strict. And he used to make me work, and I did have to work. I mean, when he came back from the coal business, some of the coal bags were ripped. I had to sew them. I sit on the coal bags and in the winter time, Father made me a sledge. I used to deliver coal around the streets, you know, about on a Friday night. It was every Friday night. I'd deliver about between 10 and 15 bags of coal around the streets. And I used to have a sack truck, and my mum used to hold the bags. I used to fill them, weigh them, put them on my sack truck and take them round, you know. And my dad used to, well, when he used to go out on the lorries, and then during the war, when they actually bombing Coventry, he used to go out with his lorry delivering the coal, and people used to ask him to move, you know, some of the damaged furniture and stuff like that, and he was very, very obliging. He'd do anything for anybody, you know. And one day, he came home. Well, he used to come home several with lots of bits and bobs he'd picked up during the, you know, travels, damaged stuff. Sometimes were damaged, sometimes they weren't. And one day he came home with a live incendiary bomb. Mind you, didn't know it live. All I knew, it hadn't gone off. You know, about 3 foot long with it. And I used to play with it and show people and that. And then one day I decided I could perhaps dismantle it and get the powder out. So I put it in a vice, which we'd got outside the big shed, big steel vice, clamped it in this vice, got a pair of Stiltons and took the bottom off, like a T-shape, pulled it out, and as I pulled it out, now I realised it must have been the detonator, but I didn't know what it was. It was just like a glass pencil that was sticking out about 4 inches like that. Anyhow, I took it away. I emptied the powder out. I got about a cupful of silver powder out, you know. And I took it up the yard, because we got a big yard. And we'd got a bit of a fire, because we used to burn a bit of rubbish up there, you know. And I put it in this fire thing and lit it. And all those almighty flash, just like that there. Big flash. No bang, no noise, just a flash, you know. And that, but it didn't blow anything anywhere, it just flashed, and that's when it went out, you know. During the Blitz, one night, well, I used to go out several nights with him. If we had an air raid shelter, I put my mum in there, you know, and I put a light in there with batteries, you know. And then I could hear these planes flying over, and I told my dad, like, you know, and he said, come on. So we walked up the top of the street, which was not very far, 30, 40 yards. And there was a gypsy yard there. And then next to the gypsy yard, there was a farmhouse, and then a farm gate. Well, we stood on the farm gate, me and my dad stood on the farm gate, watching the explosions over Coventry during the Blitz. This was the Blitz night. Flashes going everywhere, bombs going off. And I could hear the planes going over, and I told my dad planes were going over, you see, and that. And he said, he told me he could feel the vibrations when the bombs were exploding with his feet. He could feel that. And he told me, see, he used to shout to me, planes. I used to tell him planes coming over. There was nothing going on in Bedworth where I was there. There were no bombs going. Well, there was one incident. We had the school had the air raid shelters just down, and we used to go on when we were at school at the air raid. We used to go in the shelters, but We didn't go in very often because there weren't much going on at Bedworth. But people from Coventry, there was a family from Coventry came several nights, you know, and in this shelter, they used to stop the night. And during one of the bomb raids, it must have been an accident, but one of the stricken bombs went over Bedworth and dropped down. Some dropped in, not Marbury Avenue, at the bottom of Marbury Avenue in the fields. One had a direct hit on the air raid shelter and killed that family, killed that Coventry family. Regarding my site, when I left school at 13, went to work in a munitions factory, Riley it was, and I hadn't been there about 6 months, and I was working on the machine. I was doing machining a part called cannon mounting clamps, which was for Spitfires. Oh, wow. I was told. And the material I was using looked like aluminium, but I was told, in the solid form it was harmless. But when it was filings or turn-ins, it was highly inflammable, and it had to be removed every 2 hours, which they did. The labourers used to come and move it every 2 hours. But during one of them operations, I'd done several operations on it, and I had a new drill fitted, and it was during one of them things that the thing exploded, and fragments flew apart, and one went in my eye and blinded me in the right eye. So they took me to Kenilworth, which it was a convalescent home, but converted to an eye hospital during the war. And they operated on me there, removed the shrapnel, but in doing so, they removed the lens of the eye out. So that left me blind, you know. So, and of course, I've put up with it ever since. But it didn't stop me going in the army. They called me up from going in the army. I was in the army for 2 years, and I passed my driving test in the army. And I was a company driver. I was the only driver in the company. I came out of the army beginning of 1949, and this was 49, January 49. So I started on the ambulance service, and I stopped there for 40 years, on the ambulance service for 40 years. Not at Bedworth. I had 3 years at Bedworth, 37 years at Coventry. And in the end, when I retired, I was a station officer in control officer and station officer in control. I had 25 years driving emergencies and 15 years in the control office. I got a commendation from the chief constable one day for disarming a gunman, and one for the chief ambulance officer sent me a commendation, and the chief police officer, he sent me a commendation as well. I've had a good life. I've had a wonderful, wonderful life. Well, helping people, you know, putting yourself out. It won't hurt you. Don't hurt anybody if you put yourself out. Yeah. And I've often put myself out many, many times, you know, to help people. Even when I've been off duty, I've been called upon to help people, you know. As I say, try and put yourself out, try and think and help people even. You know, if you can think about it and help people, you'll get on far better.
Childhood 1940 by Will Rowe. Food on ration, no more fashion. Toys of wood, ours for good. Blackout curtain, air raid for certain. Air raid warden, name of Gordon. Checking things are all right, shouting out, "Put out that light!" Sirens rouse us from our bed, Jerry's flying overhead. Anderson shelter, helter-skelter, bombs are crashing, people dashing. Siren sounds, all clear, puts an end to our fear. Mum's all right, Dad's all right, Jerry's cleared off out of sight. Brother holds me, arms enfold me, house still standing, our boys are landing. Another day, another dawn, picking shrapnel off our lawn. Off to work, off to school, life goes on, that's the rule. Lessons learnt, out to play, For us kids, it's just another day. Time to play, mates to call. Let's go and play in the bombed out school.
Thinking back now, I don't know how they managed to give us a childhood, but with that street, Croxall Street, everybody knew everybody else, and we'd all got aunties if mum wasn't there, you know. So yeah, it was just an ordinary childhood. We heard, I think they kept a lot from us, but we heard things, you know, about the bombing on the Fosal Road, the Moonlight Sonata. We heard all of that. But it didn't mean anything to us, really. Now it does. Yeah. No fear. I don't think I had any fear because I don't think we realised what it was. This business with them bombing Coventry, that's why they wanted Coventry, was all the factories. You'd got tractor factories there, fat 4-car factories, and they were making the Spitfires. That's what they were after, was Coventry. Because it's only 5 miles from here. And my mum said that she could see the planes coming from there, turning at the church and going back to bomb. Because they were using this as a point. They tried to bomb one railway line from the pit, and they were thinking they were bombing the Coventry to Nuneaton, and they missed it. And all the bombs are down one side of that railway line somewhere still. And of course all the tram lines were all up from Coventry to Bedworth. And the tram turned round at where, have you seen the memorial we've got for the soldiers?
Yes.
Well, that's where they turned round and went back to Coventry.
Okay.
That was top of the towns, and then they went back because all the lines were all... I don't know how my dad got to work, whether he went on a bike, but they all had to go. This house in Croxall Street, it was a 4-storey, and the bottom was a cellar. And I think it had been a bit of a farm sort of thing. My dad put everything down there, my bed and everything, and it was great. And you went in from the house down. Anyway, after that Moonlight Sonata, he come home, he says, you're not going in there again, because everybody had been either drowned or gassed. And he'd just put a new gas stove in upstairs in the lounge, the one room. So that's when we had an air raid shelter.
Okay.
He says, no, you're not going in there again. Yeah. My cousin got married at the Trinity Church in Coventry, and she had 13 bridesmaids in 1945. Now, where did she get all these? We all had short dresses with white buckskin boots. There was a bit of black market where they could buy. I don't know, you know, but people seem to look after the clothes a lot more, you know, and make do and mend and peg rugs and that, and all the old stuff, yeah. These things appeared, you know. Where they came from, nobody asked any questions.
With the ration books, how did they used to use those?
Used to mark them. What you'd had.
Fantastic.
When you went shopping, they marked what you'd had. Same with that, you'd only got so many. Oh, another one here. And they cut them out. And the little one with my dad, you couldn't get in the factory if you hadn't got that. This one. This one. You couldn't get into the stand, and that's where they were making the Spitfires. He was working in the hosiery at Hinckley. Yeah. But of course they had to do anything, but he missed all the people having to go into the army. They had age groups, and my dad just missed him each time, but he still had to work. Well, if you didn't work, you were in prison.
Yeah.
So he used to have to go to the Standard from here, which is Tile Hill.
Gosh.
Yeah. Whether they'd slept all night or not. But yeah, you had to have all of that. My dad went out to, him and my cousin. It's this one here. I think his name was Les. They used to go around the club singing. And he'd gone to Warnford Hospital at Leamington with the Canadian Air Force men, and that's what they used to do. They used to go around there, or he was going around the club singing. But he got a fantastic voice. Matt Munro, all over. That's what I had at his funeral. And Bing Crosby, all those. I've got all his sheet music in there. We moved from there, which was 4 stories, the cellar I'm talking about, a lounge, then upstairs there was a bedroom, and one up there. But at the side of this, there was my grandma's house there, at the side of our lounge, and then the Greenoffs were in the ones behind our room, and this was a whole family. And one thing I can remember, the Greenoff girls, there was 3 of them, and the 2 fellas, and they used to clean the teeth outside down the hill, because we hadn't got running water. You know, they clean the teeth there, and they all had the flat tins that, and I can, that's something that stuck in my mind. They just stood outside the front door cleaning the teeth at the tap. Yeah. And the toilets were over the hill, which is this big bump of a hill where you go down. That's where our house was. And it was just, just accepted that that's the way things were, There was 2 toilets for about 5 houses. And when they come from the pub round the corner, the Little Works pub, where my dad used to sing, and they'd all use that toilet as well. And then 1944, I think it was, the new council houses were all built. And that's where nearly all of us moved there. We moved into a new house. And we had 2 toilets, one downstairs and one upstairs, and a bathroom. I don't think they've got the freedom we've got. I mean, we've walked back from Nuneaton at 2 o'clock in the morning after going to the dances. I don't like driving my car back from there now. Yeah. I don't think they've got what they think they've got that we had. Yeah. It was... everybody went round in gangs. It was... but a gang of... we go to the Arden down the road there, and they had the big bands. But the lads had all walked together, we'd all walked down Massey Lane, back down, dropped off at home and different things. It was just, that's just the way it was. Yeah, they haven't got the freedom we had. Definitely not. And I'll say it again and again, we had the best times. Yeah. Really did. The fun. I only threw my roller skates away when I come here. We used to go skating twice a week now. And then dancing on a Saturday night there, and then down the co-op down in Eton. But this was sort of, I suppose I was 15, 16 and that, But it was the fun times, no 2 ways about it. And my dad would speak to anybody's baby. If you'd got one, he'd take it off you and give it a hug on it. That's just the way he was. And he could stop anybody's baby crying. He was just that sort of person, But you wouldn't leave your pram out there now. But that sort of freedom has stopped, I think. Yeah. The nice side of things, I think we've had the best. I don't care what anybody says. If I kick the bucket tomorrow.
I was born in my grandma's house. Then I think after I was born, we were given a council house, which we were lucky really, being in the war. And all I can remember is in the house when I was growing up. And it was a big, large garden. And at the bottom of the garden, there was a big built shelter in the war, and it was for all the residents in the street, but it was a great big place. But the thing was, because it was brick built, the roof on it, the roof was about that thick cement, which I suppose really it had to be that because it was a bomb shelter, and I thought, oh, that's too heavy, it's going to fall, you know. So I was a little bit apprehensive about going in there. I thought, oh, I don't want to go in there. Because, of course, there was no windows and there was no lights or anything, and it was pitch black. And me being very small, I didn't like it. I didn't want to go in there, like, you know. But, of course, you've got no option. When you're little, they just pick you up and you're in there, and that's it. And my dad, he was in the Royal Observer Corps because he worked at the GEC, which is electrical engineer. So, being in electrics, they said, no, you stay where you are. And, he worked during the day, and then he'd come home, have something to eat, put his uniform on, and I always remember it was a big grey one with a beret. And that was the impression I got of my dad as I was growing up. And then he'd be off doing his duty during the night, so he didn't get a lot of sleep. So my mum told me one night he came back and he was so tired. He took me out of the bed, put me in the bed between them, and he said, I'm so tired. He says, if a bomb drops now, we'll all go together. And I can remember Mum very clearly telling me that, you know, and I thought, it must have been awful, you know, not being sure whether you would go to bed and the next morning you're still alive. When the war finished, and we had a street party. Oh, and everybody was dancing and singing, and, you know, and I remember there was a great big long table all down the street, and I suppose all the women were trying to put food on the table, and all the kids, we all dressed up, fancy dress, and I was, they dressed me as a gypsy. Well, I remember my mum had got some gold curtain rings. She tied some string around them and clipped them over my ears. So I'd got these dangly earrings, and I was doing this business, which I thought really was really good. And then, of course, all the kiddies were there dancing, and some of the boys were there. They'd got sheets around them and towels on the head, being Arabs and that sort of thing. And we thought it was great, you know. But we didn't realise it was the end of the war. We just thought it was a party. But then, of course, you'd started to see men coming home in uniforms and things like that, which we'd never seen before. So it was strange for us. We kept thinking, who are they? Because you just didn't realise who they were. But I remember the big bonfire that we had as well, and it was massive. And we thought, oh, it's great here, you know. And so, some of them were throwing potatoes in the fire, you know, so they could have roast potatoes. And but then the next day, I think, or the day after, they were clearing all the mess away. And you could see where the fire had been in the road, you know, so it had made a mark in the road, in the surface. And that was there for, ages and ages. And then, of course, they had to come and redo the floor. But that was good. I enjoyed that. As I grew up, I mean, the kiddies in the street, I mean, we'd be off playing and that, you know. At the bottom of our garden, there was a small grass area, then there was banks, and then the canal. So, of course, it was a hiding place for the kids, you know, on the hill and that. And also, I remember we used to, the boys would build rafts, and then we'd be on the canal, you know. I mean, if ever my mum and dad knew, they'd go mad because I couldn't swim. So it was, That was good. I never told them that I went on the canal. And so that was good. Then, of course, we'd all got bikes then, or maybe second-hand bikes, but we'd still got bikes. The boys would make the trolleys out of the old pram frames. And, you know, we'd have a real high time. Just when I was, teenager, I was about 17 then. And, we went to the Locarno at Hinckley. And they said the fog was coming down, and we thought, oh, we'll be all right. But we managed to catch the last bus from Hinckley to Nuneaton. And, of course, we got to Nuneaton, and by that time, no buses. And we thought, well, how the devil are we going to get home? So we thought, well, and it was thick fog. You know, you could hardly see yourself where you were going. And my friend that I was with at the time, she says, well, I don't fancy walking home in this. So I says, well, it's either that or, I says, I know, we've got an idea. So she says, why? I says, in the police station. So I went in the police station, the copper at the desk, he said, what's the matter, girls? I says, well, we've missed the last bus and we can't get home. Well, where do you live? Bedworth. Oh, right. So anyway, he looked at us and I says, well, you know, can you help us? He says, well, I don't know about that. So I says, well, it's either that or we stay here with you. And I bet he thought, oh, no way. So he says, oh, come on then. He says, I'll take you home. And he did. He took us home, which was really good, you know. So, because, I mean, my mum was more nervous than I was, you know. And she was very, what shall I say, overprotective at times, because sometimes I used to think, oh, for goodness sake, I can take care of myself, you know. But no, that was a good escape. I think they've got more freedom now, actually, because they don't seem to, how can I put it? They don't seem to realise that there are dangers around. I mean, we were lucky at our age because there wasn't so much crime. They've got no, I won't say respect, but they think that they can just do as they want, you know. Whereas we knew we'd got freedom. We knew we could go out and enjoy ourselves. But at the same time, we still respected where we were and what we were doing. Everything's changed. Like all the countries have changed. Some countries don't seem to have the same outlook that we've got. I mean, the problems that we've got in the country now. I feel so sorry for some of these that are being bombed and things like that, you know. I think it must be absolutely terrible for them. Although we went through it in our wars, it was a different attitude to everything. And it was so much, it was harder because we didn't have the food. We didn't, but I mean, they haven't got food now, you know. And see some of these poor children, you know, that are suffering through no fault of their own, because it's just certain ones that want more than they've already got. And then, of course, they're picking on the ones that can't stand up for themselves as well as they can. When I was a teenager, because I could come and go to a certain extent how I wanted, and I knew how far I could go. You know, I'd got a limitation and I knew how far I could go, but I'd got more freedom then than when I grew up, because I was 22 when I got married, and then of course the 2 children came along, and then your freedom's gone, because you've got responsibilities. You've got to think to yourself, oh, I've got to be back at a certain time to do meals and that sort of thing, you know, washing, ironing. So your freedom's gone. So teenagers are the ones that get the most freedom. Yeah, definitely. I just wish everybody could have a good life, you know, and I wish all the wars would stop so we could have peace. And that's it, really. We don't consider ourselves cousins, we consider ourselves sisters.
Well,
because we haven't known a life without each other.
No.
So it's always been a close-knit family, you know. Yeah. So we don't consider not seeing each other.
No.
You know, so it's we've always been there together.
Always lived in Bedworth.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was going to say I was born just over the wall.
In Croxall Street?
In Croxall Street. And you always knew the local Bobby. Yeah, because when you saw him, you'd go...
Oh, he'd clip him round the ears and
oh, yeah, yeah. He thought nothing of, you know... Yeah. I think, really speaking, I think being in the war... They probably thought, well, we need to take a photograph of them. And in those days, you always had a real photograph. I'm wondering whether that's why they had the photograph taken. To show off our new shoes.
You'd got cream-coloured ones. I had white boxing boots.
Mm. Yeah, but you didn't keep them clean very well.
No. I ought to have been a lad.
Yeah. Well, in those days, you didn't think about anything else. I mean, nobody got cars. Yeah. And as I say, in the war, I mean, there was nothing, you know, so if you wanted to get somewhere, you'd got to walk, and that was it. Mm. Well, I know my stepdad, Ken, he worked on the Coventry Corporation buses, and even when all the bombing, he said the buses still ran. Yeah. To make sure people got where they wanted to go. You know, they sort of cleared paths on the main road, they'd cleared areas so that the buses could get by.
If somebody wanted to go up the town, which is how far it is, very far, Auntie Pam would probably leave her in Croxall Street while she went up the town shopping. Yeah. Because Grandma and Grandad were there and my mum. Mm.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, this is it, you know, so you...
We didn't have prams, though. I had a wheelbarrow.
Yeah. And I had...
Didn't have a pram, a doll's pram. I had a teddy bear in it, and it was brown, orange inside with WH on the side of it. She had a pram.
An orange box made into a pram.
My dad and her dad made everything, didn't they?
Oh, yes, yeah. Both of them, you know, they were pretty good.
The hands.
There wasn't anything that they couldn't do, really, you know.
I lived in Stratford, which was like the E15. Well, if you watch the EastEnders, you know you're not far from that territory. And where we lived, it was very near a school playground, and they had a barrage balloon in that house in there. And if the Germans didn't damage your property, when they brought the barrage balloon down, depending on how much wind there was, very often the cables came down, knocked the chimneys off the roof, and then they came through the tiles, and you then didn't have a waterproof house anymore. The house we were living in was divided into 2 flats, and we had the upstairs flat, which got damaged and wasn't habitable. So because I was under 5, my mother was allowed to go with us as part of the evacuee programme. So that was my brother. My brother was 4 years older than me. So the 3 of us were shipped out to the East Coast, and that left my dad to find a property for us to live in, which he did. And he said, he sent for us, and he said, the good thing about this is the school's just at the top of the road. I said, well, that's great. But in the meantime, before we moved back, the Germans dropped a landmine on the school and totally flattened it in the adjoining houses and shops. So we didn't go to that school at all. We had a 2-mile walk to get to school. But the way where we moved out is about 10 miles out to the east. And you're not far away from the Thames. And the Thames was the Germans' flight path into London. You can't miss it, can you? Just follow the Thames and you end up in London. So they just dropped bombs willy-nilly anywhere. And also the fighter aircraft that were escorting them, they just machine gunned anything around. And we had concrete roads around there, not tarmac. And I could even, to this day, take you and show you where the bullets ricocheted off that road. And I can remember us being machine gunned on the way to school, and my brother's chucking me into somebody's front garden, for a bit of shelter. Then at school, there was an ACAC battery not far from our school. They called it the windmill site. So it was a raised site where they could put the ACAC gun, which gave them better possibilities firing at enemy aircraft. And we used to hear that at school. And we also had brick-built shelters. So if the air raid siren went, we were all shouted out into the... As a child, I thought, well, that's good, it's maths, and I won't have to do maths in the shelter because nobody can see anything. And I say we took it for granted because we didn't know any different. And then the other thing was our school football ground wasn't in the school, it was just a little bit up the road because when you got past our school, it was the green belt. There was nothing then till the arterial road. And one time, I don't know what happened, it was one of these, don't take it home, they dropped a bomb in the football pitch and blew up that, so we couldn't play football. The bombed out school I told you about was our playground. Yeah. And where the corridors had been, there was slabs, and underneath that slab would have run the heating, the pipes and so on. And because what we used to do is bob down one end and follow it'd be tunnel to us, and come up somewhere else, and play hide and seek and so on. And the other thing was there was no toys unless you had toys left over from before the war, which were pretty well damaged by then. And I can remember my dad was very good at woodwork, and he made me a wooden rifle, and somebody pinched it on me. And I mean, it wasn't, something super, but somebody else decided to have it. And that really upset me. And you played cowboys and Indians. And because your gun was your 2 fingers and your thumb, and you go around bang, bang, with that. And you didn't see that was the carnage going on in the war all over the world, because you lived in a world of propaganda. So if we went and saw a newsreel, which was pathy newsreel in those days, mostly black and white, you saw what they wanted you to see. And that was your idea of war. Or the newspaper came out and you'd have photographs of what was supposed to be going on. It was probably, far from the truth. But that's the world you lived in propaganda. Dad used to work like what we'd call round-the-clock shifts. So one week he'd be on like 6 to 2, and then he'd be on 2 to 10, and so on. So he might go off on night shift, and you think, you know, Dad's out there, it's blackout, and is he coming home again? And then, of course, next morning you come in, you say, oh, thank God Dad's home, you know. But that went on right through the war. Yeah. When you left school, and you left school at 15 then, well, there wasn't any higher education. You didn't go off to university and so on. You got your job, and you knew, unless you were an apprentice, in 3 years' time, when you're 18, you'd be conscripted because it was national service. So whatever you were doing, you think, well, where's my life going then? And my brother had served in the RAF before me, because being 4 years older. When I did my service, I did 2 years. And you think, well, you know, you don't know where you're going or what's going to happen to you, anything. It's like a big mystery. And eventually my call-up papers came, and the first thing you did was go for medical somewhere or other, and you have an aptitude test, you know, to see what you're good at and what you're not good at. But you don't know until you actually get your call-up papers what you're going to serve in. Yeah. And then, of course, what you do is you get your papers and it says where you've got to report. And this is where your real-life education starts, because I didn't know much north of Watford. And all of a sudden, I'm in Lancashire, in the middle of winter, next to the Manchester Ship Canal, and I'm doing square bashing. Now, that is the most brutal thing that goes on. And you think, what's this got to do with aircraft and flying? I'm being shouted at all day. I'm being marched in chase. But looking back on it, that is the fittest I've ever been in my life. And you make comrades because it's an us and them. So it was a totally different life, and it did you a lot of good. And I think so, like, I could go anywhere, and apart from that, there was great fun. I look back and I think I had some good times, and then I went on my permanent station, and I think if I hadn't met my first wife, I would have probably signed on for longer. Yeah. But what did I do? I met a lass from Nuneaton, because I was posted with her to be her brother-in-law to be. Yeah. So I became a Midlander from there on. Well, what do you consider as freedom? Because at least I could walk around. I hadn't got cameras looking at me. I hadn't got ANRP if I got in a vehicle. You went out to play. You had a whole street to play in. There wasn't parked cars. I think we had 2 cars round by us. When I was most free? I think in my early courting days, you used to go dancing, the co-op dance hall as it was, and you didn't have to worry about coming home in the dark or walking or anything. The world was, well, I'd say free then. You didn't have to worry about anything, and. It didn't matter whether was it the last bus home or what, but you didn't think, oh, well, I haven't got to be worried about being mugged or anything like that. Well, you didn't have much to be mugged for anyway. I think it's geography. I mean, I still think it's that semi-freedom in this country. But when I look at something last night about what's going on in Gaza, and I think I remember the Blitz, but nothing like what they're living under. it's all geography, isn't it? People in Ukraine, if you look at the location of Ukraine, you know, Russia's literally sitting on top of them, the biggest country in the world with the most resources. And you think, so, I mean, what I've done, because I'm so bored by war all over the place, I've done quite a few memorial poems, because when it's November, you know, Armistice Day, I always make sure I've got a fresh poem, because I think about all these people that died for our freedom in both the wars. And, you know, they died in some place that was foreign to them. And it's just something, you know, I like to do. I put myself in the place of that. I don't know whether it's out there, but there's a poem about Rory's chair. And it's the chair at the table. And funnily enough, I've sort of scented it up north. Now, I don't know why, but this chair was Rory's chair at the table, and he doesn't come back. But the family still keep that chair for him. It's his chair, you know.
The Empty Chair by Will Rowe. There it stays, the empty chair, where once our Rory sat there. It stays there empty day by day. It's been like that since Rory went away. Rory enlisted to do his bit. The army took him, found him fit, whisked away to a bloody war. That's the last of our Rory we saw. Month by month his letters came, ending with love and then his name. The letters ceased. They came no more. He paid the price in that awful war. The telegram came with the dreaded news. No more will our Rory his chair choose. The family wept, the family cried when the news came that Rory had died. In time his posthumous medal came. Engraved on its edge was his name. Although pride was intended there, it couldn't make up for Rory's empty chair. No more would he sit and eat thus, laughingly tell Mam not to make a fuss. His eyes sparkling and smiling face would no more the family table grace. Yes, Rory's gone, he did his duty well. In foreign lands does his body dwell. His name forever engraved in stone, with other heroes never coming home. While at home sits his empty chair, never again will our Rory sit there. Although we know it's an empty space, it will always be known as Rory's place.